All right, I want to talk about a player who is a very fascinating player to talk about, I think. The Lions have both of the Okwara brothers, but today we're going to talk about Romeo Okwara and what happened to him, because he was someone who, listen, the Lions gave him some money. If you look at his, list of contracts he's been given, what's with the Lions for a bit, the Giants, back to the Lions, where he got, if you look at there's the total money and then there's the, average per year all the way at the right. You look at the average per year, 630,000, 455,000, then 3 million, sort of 3.4 million essentially. But then that shot up to a 3-year, $37 million deal. That's 13 million a year. That's a good amount of money, right? That's what you pay good edge rushers. But then last season, now he was on, this upcoming season, I should say, he's only expected to get paid 2.5 million. So what happened? Well, if you look at his box score statistics, you'll notice that, okay, this kind of makes some sense. He had a career year before getting paid. He had 10 sacks and then got a pretty big deal, to which, it was that 3-year deal, but they've negotiated it after the second year to give him less money due to the, guaranteed money and all that. But since then, only 3 sacks the past 2 seasons. It's not like he was a huge sack guy anyway. He had one 10-sack season and one 7.5 sack season, and that's mostly been it for him. But if you look at his Pro Football Focus page, this one is going to kind of tell the story a lot more of what we should, of what we can see with Okwara. So, year in and year out with the Giants, he didn't really show much, didn't have a particularly great grade. With the Lions in sort of 2018, 2019, and 2020, he was solid. He was a solid player, but nothing spectacular, with the exception of that 2020 pass rush grade, which was by far, and still is by far, the best of his career, of an 84.5 grade. The run defense was bad. It was actively bad, according to PFF. They gave him just a 45 grade. And while in 2020 and in 2021, you've seen that the run defense has gotten better, the pass rush has certainly dipped. But there's one other very important stat we have to look at when talking about Romeo Okwara, and that is the one all the way at the left, the total snaps, TOT. That is the total snaps, and he's been under 200 each of the past 2 seasons. He's been banged up, and that's obviously factored into why he hasn't necessarily been able to be a superstar. Is to be a good player, you have to first be a player. You have to be on the field, and when you don't have that availability, well, then that's going to hurt you. And I think, to me, that's the biggest reason why we've seen, basically him turn into a guy who they felt like could be I don't know if I would say cornerstone piece, but a real important piece they wanted to keep around and gave, $13 million a year to now they're basically just giving him a 1-year flyer deal for just $2.5 million. But okay, I wanted to watch some film. I wanted to talk about what exactly is the case with Romeo Okwara, because he is a very interesting player, and I, again, was hurt for basically the first 15 games last season. Well, maybe a good way to see how he could, have success in the future is let's watch some of the tape of when we've recently seen him play and what was he able to do. And in fact, in his first game, I believe this was week 15, so he missed his first not 15 games, but around there. And what's going to happen in this game is he actually got multiple sacks. These were the 2 sacks he had last year, were both in this game on Zach Wilson. Poor Zach Wilson. But let's talk about what Okwara was able to do on each of these 2 plays. Well, first, let's start off with this one. Okay, one-on-one matchup against a right tackle for the Jets. Okay, cool. Let's see what he's able to do. Right when this play begins, this is not necessarily a great job by Okwara. And again, it's worth mentioning, pass rushers typically lose. That's just kind of the nature of the position, is that more often than not, on more snaps than not, you're going to lose as opposed to win. A bad offensive lineman going up against a good defensive lineman, you still expect that bad offensive lineman to win the majority of the snaps just because that's the nature of the position. If you win 20% of the time as an edge rusher, you're in the GOAT conversation. But okay, so he doesn't really win immediately off the line, but as I mentioned, this is going to be a sack. Well, what happens? As you see, Zach Wilson's going to kind of try to get into a gap, and Okwara is able to reach out and make the play. And there are two different ways you could take that. You could look at that and say, okay, that's clearly an element of luck. He didn't necessarily, throw the tackle to the side like he's nothing and then go over and, get to the quarterback. It was more so he took advantage of an opportunity when it came to him. But you know what? There still is value in being able to do that. I don't know how much value, and I don't know how much you value that over a guy who's just able to, win against tackles one-on-one, but you want someone who can do that, and there is some value in that, and as long as he's on the field, that's a benefit. Something like this is a very fascinating one, I would say, because it's again going to be set up due to a good situation by, this is actually going to be Aiden Hutchinson, who's lined up as an edge, not as an edge rusher, but as an interior defensive lineman, also on the left side of the screen. Okwara, the edge rusher, Hutchinson, the interior defensive lineman, going up against the guard. Right when this play begins, you're going to see that Hutchinson is right in Zach Wilson's face and is in position to where, while, if Wilson wanted to get outside the pocket and wanted to use his legs, he can't go in that direction. So while Okwara is typically the contain guy on this play and has to make sure he doesn't go too far towards the inside, because if he does, then Wilson could get to the outside. And say what you want about Zach Wilson, he is certainly an athletic player, so you don't want that to happen. But now you don't have to worry about that because Hutchinson is kind of become the contain guy here. So for Romeo Okwara, he notices this, and that's kind of something that I think is very impressive. As you see, watch him come in. He's going to go with an inside move to get to Zach Wilson. I think the tackle was just not ready for that kind of a move, but Okwara knew he could do it in a safe way due to this current layout and how things worked. So these are the kind of things I think Okwara brings to the table. Is he an elite edge rusher? He really hasn't shown to ever do that. He had one very good pass rushing season in a year where, let's be honest, with the run defense grade the way it was, I think it's reasonable to guess that perhaps on that play he was saying, hey, this is a contract year. The 2020 Lions were not very good. Maybe he was like, let's just rack up some stats this year, see if I can get some sacks, get paid. It worked, good for him. But maybe now that they're trying to be a little bit more competitive, maybe him being a more well-rounded player could actually happen. Or maybe it's just the kind of situation where he's not that player. He's not a 10-sack guy, but he still is an effective rotational piece. And the reality is, $2.5 million for a rotational piece, that's absolutely something that's kind of a steal, really, for the Lions. So how good is he going to be? I mean, again, there's the huge question of, will he just be on the field? How much snaps will he be able to get? How long will he be healthy? But if he does stay healthy, I don't think that we're never going to hear his name again. I think he's still an effective player in the NFL. He's just probably not someone who should be getting a $13 million a year contract. That was probably a bit of an overpay, but good for him for getting that money. But yeah, that's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.